What's going on, everybody? This is Car Wash here, bringing you a deck profile for the new year. People think, it's Yu-Gi-Oh, new year, new deck. Not me. I'm a kid at heart, and I love stuff that's old school. And this is my old school burn deck profile for January 2019. It's nothing impressive, but it's won me a few duels at locals, so you never know. To start this thing off, without any further ado, we're going to start off with 3 copies of Marshmallow. Can't be destroyed by battle, and when this face-down defense position monster is flipped face-up, it inflicts 1,000 damage to my opponent. Classic burn card, never get rid of it, and if you do, you're stupid. Next, we got classic burn card. 2 copies of Lava Golem. I considered running 3, but not really 100% sure on it yet. Always going to keep that in mind. Next, we got 2 copies of Princess of Tsurugi. She does, whenever this card is flipped face up, she does 500 damage for every spell and trap card my opponent controls. Classic as well. Now we got 2 copies of Blast Sphere. Whenever this card is targeted for an attack while it's face down, it flips up and is attached to my opponent's monster, and during their next standby phase, it's destroyed and they take damage equal to their monster's attack. And next we got 2 copies of Death's Koala. Classic burn card again. When this card is flipped, it burns my opponent for 400 for each card in their hand. And next we got 2 copies of Battle Fader. Whenever your opponent declares a direct attack, you can summon this card from your hand and end their battle phase. Never gets old. And for the final monster of this burn deck, we're going to do Spirit Reaper. Can't be destroyed by battle. And if you attack them directly with this card, they discard a card from their hand. And if it's targeted, it gets destroyed. That's no big deal. Moving on to the spell cards, we got 3 copies of Chain Energy. Each player has to pay 500 life points to play a card from their hand. Set, summon, whatever, special summon from their hand, doesn't matter. It all takes 500. And it can help out when you're in a pinch in a burn duel, especially since a lot of people play cards from their hands. Obviously, it's called Yu-Gi-Oh! And we got 2 copies of Dark Room of Nightmare. This does an extra 300 burn damage for whenever my combo effects go off. Really helpful to get that overall maximum damage. Next, we have 2 copies of Tremendous Fire. Burns your opponent for 500 and then burns you for 500. It's a fair trade if you ask me. And next, we have 1 copy of Meteor of Destruction. If your opponent has 4,000 or more life points, it burns it for 1,000. Works really well with Dark Room of Nightmare. And we have 1 copy of Level Limit Area B. If your opponent's not playing XCs or Links, it's good to have for minor protection. All for level 4 or higher get switched to defense mode. And we got Shard of Greed. Everybody should know what this card does. Over the course of your next 2 normal draw phases, you can tribute this card and draw 2 cards. And for the final spell card, we got 1 copy of Upstart Goblin, which is draw 1 card and give your opponent 1,000 life points. Fair trade. Now moving on to the trap cards, we got 2 copies of Skull Invitation. This card burns both players for 300 for every card that they sent to the graveyard. If I have Dark Room of Nightmare on the field, they take 600 and I only take 300. It's worth it if you ask me. Next, we got 2 copies of Scrap Iron Scarecrow. It's great to block those monsters that can get around Level Limit Area B. Never hurts to have a couple. Next, we got 2 copies of Magic Cylinder. Another great staple burn card to have. Whenever a monster attacks, it stops the attack and inflicts damage equal to that monster's attack. Everybody should know what that does. And we got 2 copies of Secret Burial. This inflicts 200 damage to your opponent for all the cards in their hand and all the cards on their side of the field. Next, we got 2 copies of Gamble. You don't want to use this card unless you have the duel already well in hand. Basically, what it does, it's if you have your opponent has 6 or more cards in their hand and you have 2 or less, you flip a coin, you call it right, and you get to draw until you have 5 cards in your hand. It's like a anime card of demise. But if you call it wrong, you skip your next turn, so you got to be careful. Like I said, if you have the duel well in hand, it's not that big of a deal. Next, we got 2 copies of Blaze and Mirror Force. Everyone should know what this card does. Destroy all attack position monsters your opponent controls, and if you do, inflict damage equal to half of their combined attack, and you take the same damage. And next, we got 1 copy of Gravity Bind. It's just a trap version of Level Limit Area B. We got 1 copy of Drowning Mirror Force. Instead of being destroyed, when your opponent declares a direct attack, you shuffle all their monsters back into their deck. It's great for not targeting. And I also got 1 copy of Ring of Destruction, another classic burn card. It's the eroded version. You can't play the old school version, which kind of sucks. Basically, you target one monster during their turn, opponent's monster during their turn, inflict damage equal to its original attack as long as their life points are higher than what you're attributing off their field, and you all both take the burn damage. And finally, for the last trap card, we got a classic Bottomless Trap Hole. I know this is outclassed in a lot of decks, but I think a lot of decks won't see it coming. Anyway, it'll just banish for something you don't like. Anyway, guys, that's going to be my video for today. That's the January 2019 burn deck. It's classic. It's not super competitive, but it'll get around some stuff. Alright, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you very much, and arrivederci.